Hi, this is Brandon from Watches on You, and today we're taking a look at three of my favorite vintage Rolexes. First, the Rolex Submariner 16800 Tritium Submariner, so it's got the tritium lume. The 1981 Gmt Master 16750 Pepsi. And then, last but not least, the 1991 Rolex Explorer 2 Rail Dial. First, we're going to start out looking at the Submariner. So, as I said, this is the Rolex Submariner 16800. Now, you may have heard of the 1680, which was a legendary Rolex Submariner. It looked really awesome, a great, very popular vintage. The 16800, it's got that extra zero on the end of the reference number because it has the sapphire crystal. This was the first Submariner with the sapphire crystal. So, as you can see, this has the legendary Oyster case. All these watches have the Oyster case. Stainless steel, very high quality. This specific one has that wonderful patina on all the lume. It has 300 meter water resistance. It's not like some of the older Submariners that have that 200 meter water resistance, because this is slightly more modern with regards to vintage, how vintage Rolexes go. So again, talking about actually the dial. Now you can see at the bottom, you may not be able to see this right now, but at the bottom of the dial, you can see it says Swiss T is less than 25, which that T indicates that it has tritium lume, which is a radioactive isotope of hydrogen that emits light. So actually, more modern watches that have this are Luminox watches. It just helps them glow, and they glow all the time. So charging doesn't make a difference, which is an advantage of it. You don't have to charge it ever because it's radioactivity that causes the light to come out. Now, don't be afraid, the radioactivity is very slight. I think it's alpha particles, which if you're into physics aren't too dangerous. They don't penetrate that deep into the materials. So now we're going to go over to a wrist shot of this piece. So actually, while I'm getting this on here, I might as well mention, as you saw, this is on currently on a leather strap. Now it does come with the original stainless steel Oyster strap with it. Oyster bracelet. And I'll show that to you in a sec. So here's the wrist shot actually. You can see it's again 40 millimeters, very classy sort of size for a diver. Doesn't look too big at all, just very, very elegant. It's not too in your face like bigger watches can be at all. Very, very classic design. So here is that Oyster bracelet it comes on. This is available at Hudson Jewelers. All these watches are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, pre-owned. So here it is, very good condition. They take care of their watches here. So not too big of a bend in the bracelet, which indicates, again, very good condition. Now we're going to move on to the Gmt Master Pepsi. So this watch was originally developed in cooperation with Pan American Airlines in the 1950s. This was because flying distances were increasing at this time, so pilots were increasingly traveling in between different time zones, so they kind of wanted to be able to track time in two different time zones. So this watch just kind of plays into that history, and you can see because it's got that GMT function, you can track two time zones. Actually three, depending on how you use the bezel here with the 24 hours marked. So again, this has like the Submariner and the Rolex Explorer 2 that we'll be doing later, has the legendary Oyster case. It is waterproof. This has a sapphire bezel, also like the Submariner. It's got that wonderful patina. I'd actually say this has a little bit more patina than that Sub. And this also has the tritium lume, so it's got that kind of interesting little sciencey history behind it. This watch is a really, really cool, it just looks old and vintage. It looks awesome because of that bezel. It's kind of, I don't want to say worn down, but it's just patinaed. The red, I mean, it was the Pepsi, so it had red here, blue here. It's more of an orange now, and it's a light blue. It just looks really, really cool on the wrist. So again, now moving on to kind of the movement, it's got that GMT function. So this red hand here is a 24-hour hand. So depending on how you use the bezel and this GMT hand, you can move this bezel to the current hour time, and then if you look at a map, usually it has the time zones label on it, and you can set that accordingly to however you want it, the +2, -2, whatever it is relative to Greenwich Mean Time. And you can kind of get 2 time zones using that, or 3 depending on how you use the bezel. This watch has a date function. It's got that beautiful magnifier there. It's really, really crisp on the date too. That lettering is super, super crisp. I'll make it a little bit easier to see there. Yeah, look at that. So now we're going to move on to a wrist shot. Here's a wrist shot of the GMT Master. It looks really, really cool on the wrist with that patina. That just kind of actually amplifies the amount of outfits you can wear it with. You can wear it with a suit, you can wear it with anything. It's not sort of boastful or brash in any way. It's very low-key, which is why I like kind of the vintage Rolexes. People don't really notice it unless they know what it is, which is just kind of the whole cool part of owning a Rolex. So now we're going to move on to the Explorer 2. Alright, now we're moving on to the Explorer 2. So, starting off, I'll go over the kind of the history and original purpose for this watch, which is actually pretty interesting. This is actually my personal favorite Rolex, just because of the history, and it's a very low-key, but functional piece. This was originally designed for explorers, hence the name, but specifically explorers in kind of dark and difficult environments. As the GMT hand wasn't initially meant to be a GMT hand, it was more to find whether it's night or day when you're inside a cave or a dark environment where you can't really look outside. So this specific one is very special because it has a rail dial, and what that means is these 2 lines of writing down here that says superlative chronometer officially certified, they line up perfectly along the axis of the watch. Now watch people are a bit nitpicky, I'll admit, and so that's pretty important to them to have that symmetry. I'll admit it just looks much nicer than a normal one if you're looking up close. No one really will notice that unless they're pretty up close to the watch, but it's still a really, really interesting feature of it. So, like all the other watches reviewed in this video, it has that Oyster case, which just adds to the sportiness and kind of ruggedness and dependability of the watch itself. It has a 40 millimeter case, so it's small. It's, well, not necessarily small, it's kind of smaller by modern standards, but which is why they kind of upgrade it for the newer version. They actually upgraded the size. But I think, again, that small size adds a bit of class to it. It's got a 24-hour non-rotating bezel, so not like that GMT Master, where you can kind of do 3 time zones, really, if you use it right. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to use, but I think it's kind of cool with that sort of steeliness to it. It just, again, adds to the ruggedness of it. Like the GMT Master, actually, sorry, forgot to mention one of the most important things. This has a polar dial, so it's that white dial. I think that that's just cool. It just makes the watch much more low-key, because you can't even see the Rolex crown, so no one's really going to even notice it unless they know what it is, which is awesome. Moving on to the movement, it's got that GMT hand, just like this, the GMT Master. I think this has the same movement as that watch. I might be wrong for this specific one, but I know certain iterations of the Explorer did have the same movement as the GMT Master. Alright, so moving on to a wrist shot of this watch. Again, you just see that. It's just very elegant on the wrist. That 40 millimeters, in my opinion, is the perfect size. I would say that the modern size is a little bit too big for this watch, given it's that it's low-key again. It's just, I just really, really like this piece because, again, people will not know what it is unless they know what it is. And it's just got a lot of history behind it. It's beautiful. So, in summation, these are 3 great vintage Rolex watches. Out of these, my pick would, again, just be this beautiful Explorer 2. You can get these for a lot cheaper than the rail dial version if you're willing to sacrifice that it isn't a rail dial, around $5 to $6 grand pre-owned. But this one is going to cost you $19,000 at JB Hudson Jewelers, just because it is so rare. These are all in great condition. These people really, really take care of their watches. So again, all these timepieces are on for sale pre-owned at JB Hudson Jewelers in Minneapolis. This is a great store. We really like it. If you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you.